Greetings and welcome to episode 55 of the Comic Watchers Show. I'm your host from Oklahoma City, Matt Meyer. With me, as always, are the awesome, always unpredictable fellow watchers, Nick from Texas. Nick, say hello to the kids at home.
Hello to all the kids at home. Another episode. Here we are.
Indeed, indeed. And then coming at you from Virginia, out on the East Coast, is Mighty Mike Eakins.
Hello, everybody from the East Coast, right?
Sweet. So, yeah, we're going to talk about a little bit of Far Sector tonight from DC's Young Animal. We're also going to touch on the last of Marvel's Dawn of X books to be released, Fallen Angels. But first, as usual, we've got news, courtesy of Scoop Johnson.
Yes, Scoop. First and foremost, if we're not going to talk about any type of news, if we're not going to talk about Valiant and the continuing domination of 2020 that this company continues to do, they just announced Dr. Tomorrow, which will be led by Alejandro Arbona and Jim Toe doing the art, which is pretty much going to see Bart taking on a brand new villain that wants to do harm to the Valiant universe. So this can be pretty cool. The one thing I do like, a little side note here, that I do like what they're doing, excuse me, Valiant seems to kind of continue where, regardless if you've been on since the beginning with, Magnus and all that stuff, you can really jump in at any point. So even if you just now heard of Bloodshot or whatever, you can jump in on Bloodshot and not feel that you have missed so much. And you can casually go back and read Bloodshot. You can casually jump in on Dr. Tomorrow and you'll be fine. But definitely check out Dr. Tomorrow coming here next year in the Valiant 2020 era. Also news, Marvel's pull list for February. Not going to go over all the books that are coming out, but just some that are kind of, about probably the bigger titles. Gwen Stacy 1, which is kind of cool, which basically, to me, and this could just be the spider file in me, it's long overdue. They're going to do finally like an origin story of Gwen, and kind of tell that story that we haven't seen yet, we haven't gotten yet. For why it's just now, we're just now getting it, but as a Spider fan, I'll take it, especially with Christos Gage, Todd Nauck, and Adam Hughes doing the cover. Anytime there's an Adam Hughes cover or anything that Adam Hughes does, some people like him, some people don't. I'm a huge Adam Hughes fan, so on a personal standpoint, this was pretty huge for me. X-Men and Fantastic Four, Terry Dodson, Chip Zdarsky, just go buy it. Everyone else is, right? I mean, it's X-Men, it's Fantastic Four. Who's not going to buy the book? Even if you don't like it, you're still going to buy the book. You're still going to buy it. So Wolverine #1, obviously the new X titles continues. This is something that I'm definitely going to jump on a personal level. But once again, Hubert has a cover that's doing it, so it should be really good. Batman Pennyworth Rip is a interesting title where it's going to tell a world without Alfred that we don't know yet. I think it was Batman, there's a recent issue, I believe, during City of Bane, where Bane had, everyone already knows, obviously Alfred doesn't survive. But one thing, when I was doing up all the news notes and everything, I noticed that during King's Run, we haven't seen Clayface. So my thing was, is Alfred really dead? I mean, aside from, it's comics and they're never, no one's really never dead, but really we haven't seen Clayface yet in King's Run. So this could be cool. I mean, pick it up. Once again, it's going to be one of those books who doesn't pick it up, right?
Let me just interject real quick. It certainly
Yeah.
wouldn't be the first time during this particular Batman run that a major bait and switch was pulled. So
exactly.
Odds on Alfred actually being dead, not so high.
Exactly. And once again, another personal thing that I had to say, once again, the best for last, is Jenica is getting her own series in February from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the first girl turtle that she came about in issue 95, which are her first transformation, if you will. But this is going to take a look on how she has adjusted to life as a being a turtle, being fully mutated, and kind of taken on a new team. Because for those you may not know, she started out as a member of the Foot Clan, and now she's a member of the Turtles. So this is going to take a look at pretty much everything that's happened in her own personal life since issue 95, which would be really good. And as, for any turtle fans, I'm sure the talk has already been out there. Is the cover has the 4 turtles on her blades, so now there's talk of like, oh, is she going to turn? Could she turn? What's Eastman going to do? Type deal, but should be pretty good. And as always, we don't have enough time to cover all the news, so we got some first looks and some sneak peeks that I want to touch on really quick. Fresh up today is Boom Studios' The Red Mother from Jeremy Hahn and Danny Luckert. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. We do have a sneak peek of the Dark Horses Our Encounters with Evil. Sneak peek of Marvel Runaways, issue 27. Veronica, New Blood #1 for you Archie fans out there, which is kind of cool. Looks like a pretty decent twist on a old character type deal. And also, I want to make sure I give show some love to all the commentary stuff that's starting to show up, some original content. I know that Sarah Curry, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, has put up some original Star Wars commentary stuff that is really, really good. And also the Patricia Highmarsh stuff from Travis Hedge Coke is really good. So make sure you're not only going there for the news and the reviews, but we are starting to have some original commentary up there, some original content where it's kind of some good editorial, some good opinion pieces as well. So unless you gentlemen have anything to add at the last minute that you saw on the Twitter, on the Facebook, MySpace, whatever you kids are doing out there on Al Gore's internet, that is the news from the basement of the Comic Watch headquarters, gentlemen.
And what a remarkable basement it is. It's not at all musty, dusty, and gross.
No, it's not. No, yeah, I get treated like Milton from Office Space from you people, but it's fine.
Good old Milton. It's his red stapler. So we have a pair of books to talk about this week, gentlemen. First and foremost, we have Far Sector #1, courtesy of DC and Gerard Way's Young Animal pop-up imprint. It is written by Nebula and Hugo Award-winning author N.K. Jemisin and breakout superstar Jamal Campbell on art, recently seen on the Naomi Season 1 miniseries. It tells the story of a rookie Green Lantern assigned to the farthest sector of Green Lantern space, edge of the universe type stuff. And it is a very peaceful place to be. Hasn't been a murder in 500 years. Oh, there's a murder. Now she's got to solve it. So, this is where we are. This is what's going on. Mike, what on earth did you think about Far Sector?
Excuse me. I dug it for the most part. I was more drawn to the premise of the story where feelings have been kind of, banished. There hasn't been any murders or crimes for over 500 years. And then Jo being, I believe her background is, she's a Brooklyn cop. I believe so. I could get that wrong. If I am, I apologize. And she got the ring. She's the lone human lantern in the far reaches. And, she's kind of figuring out this whole investigation, right? So she's the only one that knows what's going on. She is the only one that knows how to piece together the crime scene. She's the only one that knows how to do, CSI type stuff, which is good. I did feel at times that the story was kind of traffic jammy, and I didn't know how I got there. It was like I was sitting in intergalactic traffic and I'm looking around and have no idea how I got here. But I'm not saying that in a bad sense. I'm not saying like the story was bad. It wasn't a bad book at all. I do feel the art was probably my favorite part of the book. Campbell does a lot of great stuff. I mean, his resume is really, really good. I did enjoy how Joe kind of narrated us through the story and kind of gave us an explanation of what was going on, and kind of filled in the nooks and crannies. Now with this first issue, I felt that you almost have to go back a few times and really dive into it, because there was so much going on. Not so much like just word bubbles, but there was just like words like everywhere, and you were kind of like, okay, let me stop.
There's a lot of exposition going on.
Right. And so I felt even myself kind of like, okay, I needed to pause, rewind a little bit, fix the tracking, and then kind of go back. Okay, I got it. And but no, it was good. Overall, it was good. I think I'll definitely stick around for a couple more issues. But like I said, it's not a bad story, but probably something that I would definitely excuse me, pick up on like the collected level once it's all said and done, just so you can kind of read it all in one setting without. I think it's a maxi series, I believe.
Yes, 12 inch.
Right. So it's kind of like, yeah, I like I said, it's not bad, but it's definitely had its moments. I definitely think the art carried it through the whole book, but overall, I think it was a good premise. It was a good story. Definitely something that you would probably. I don't think we've seen the last of Joe. I definitely see her probably kind of hanging around and making maybe some appearances in other books and everything. But yeah, overall, I would say it's definitely worth a pickup. If you're a Green Lantern fan, you're definitely going to pick it up. If you're a fan of stuff like, Mr. Miracle or Martian Manhunter, the far off intergalactic stuff, yeah, I definitely say, pick it up. And it's not a bad book, but just, I'll probably wait for the collected editions if I do pick it up again.
Okay. Nick, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I'm a huge fan of the Young Animal stuff, so I was really excited for this one when it was announced. I was just surprised at how it really didn't feel like a Young Animal book. It felt a bit dialed back, considering how wacky their titles are, and so I expected something like that whenever I saw the announcement, and then you kind of come into this whodunit story, and to be honest, it's not something that I get immediately pumped for, because like you said, there's a lot of exposition, and that's just kind of something that is part of the storytelling. That's how you have to lay the foundation for something like this, of intrigue and mystery. And in order to establish that, you have to selectively provide information, and this story does that. It's just a matter of, does it do enough to really pull you back in? Like you said, Green Lantern fans are obviously going to pick this up, and that's just a given. DC fans, I don't think it's so much of a Young Animal book that they're going to be off-put. I know, like, our former host, Cody, was not a fan of Young Animal stuff because of that vibe, and I don't think this falls into that. But I really liked the world building that you kind of thrown into it, the trilogy that Joe's interacting with and trying to solve this murder with, that's consisting of 3 different groups: the Na, the At, and the Katopli, and they're just on the brink of like complete annihilation at the drop of a hat. Like their piece is just so delicate, because they literally destroyed themselves and rebuilt out of the ashes of their worlds, and they're just right on the brink, even after one murder, of everybody fighting. And that's the delicacy that she's playing with, and I think that's where the story works well, and that it's able to have some consequence to it, and it's not just a random planet with a random murder. So it gives it weight. And even that felt different for Young Animal. It wasn't based on a mood or some, introspective concept. It was real world consequences that it was exploring, which, definitely breath of fresh air for Young Animal. So that's cool. And I think it'll stand up for readers outside of that typical demographic too. So super interesting stuff. And this is what I want out of a Green Lantern story. I'm a fan of Grant Morrison's, but this is more, my angle. This is what I want when I pick up a book. And Campbell is just amazing on art. Love Naomi, just brilliant. This is like, any page you can just tear out and put in a frame and hang on your wall, and it looks great, just no matter what. And it's getting to the point where I'll pick up any book that they're attached to. It's that good. And on a space epic like this with the Green Lantern, it's a dream project. So good things. I'm really excited for this book and where it's going. Matt, what about you?
Well, to kind of build on what you were talking about with tone and vibe, the thing that struck me is just how mature this comic reads. It doesn't, it's obviously, Green Lantern and out in space and all that good stuff, but it really does read like a comic for adults, and not in the adult, quote unquote, way of doing things, claiming to be adult, but it's really just an excuse to curse and have sexy time a lot and have lots of excessive violence. Like this you could genuinely hand this to someone that just reads fiction novels, and I think they dig it. There's a ton of good world building. This is an interesting society that our rookie Green Lantern's been thrown into. And I have no doubt that the friction between the three different races is going to play a pretty central component, given that it was so front and center just in this first issue. So that's really good. The art from Jamal Campbell, he's one of a handful of artists at this point that I would pick a comic up just because he drew it. Brian Hitch would be in there, a few others. But yeah, it's exciting stuff. So, you put all that together, and I say all that to say this. Why on earth wasn't I more excited when I was done reading this? And it wasn't that it was bad. It felt sort of subdued. And like it was leaning more towards mood than in a big, sexy hook. So I have the feeling that, this is a solid 8 out of 10. It's beautifully crafted, really well written. And I think 4-5 issues in, as the story gels and congeals and more angles have been seen, it's gonna become one of the best books of next year. It's just maybe a little slow out of the gate this time, and there's nothing wrong with that. Not at all. If you're gonna stretch this thing out for 12 issues, shoot, take your time to get it set up and do it right. I have nothing against that. I'm interested to find out how Jo got her ring. It's somewhat it seems to be alluded to in there that it was given to her. Whose ring it actually is, we could assume Hal Jordan, but who knows? And we also don't actually know just how attached this series is to the rest of the DC universe. So, maybe this is just a standalone thing. I would love to see Jo pop up more, although you could also make the argument that Earth has more than enough Green Lanterns right now. So, to each their own at that point. Yeah. It is what it is. But this book to me stood out really well amongst the pack, and I'm at least going to check out a couple more issues. I can't swear that it won't read best in a trade, but it's definitely something that everyone should at least give a try, because there's just not much else out there like it in terms of superhero. So, guys, final thoughts?
I love that you brought up so many Green Lanterns for Earth, because that is immediately how you get to, how did she get this?
Yeah.
I like that it was introduced in a way that felt like a trial period. Like you get a year to test this out, and like I think it was make your mark were the words.
That was specifically brought up.
Yeah, and then she said it didn't take a full year. So is it permanent now? Is this? It's not on the trial run. It
I don't
introduces
think we know yet. It's
Yeah,
also interesting because that's definitely not how the Green Lantern Corps has ever functioned, giving
right.
trial periods or anything like that. So
Right.
It's so strange
there's
already.
there's something more going on here that we just don't, as readers, aren't privy to yet.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
one thing that Nick you did touch on was the fact that it plays like a police procedural.
Yeah.
And it does. And I feel, for my money, that N.K. Jemisin hit that tone and those storytelling beats better than Grant Morrison did on his current run. What? Hold on, hear me out. I know that's a big statement, but just bear with me.
Oh, look at the time. I'm sorry.
No, The Green Lantern by Morrison definitely starts off as a procedural, but after you get past issue 6, it just starts to become more of a standard Morrison comic, and that's fine. I love Grant Morrison, but it did lose the procedural aspect going through, and now they're all black stars or whatever. This plays like an HBO Green Lantern take on a cop procedural. And the True Detective, as it were, of the Green Lantern universe.
Isn't it so wild that we're describing a young animal book as being compared to True Detective?
Right.
Actually, it is.
That.
It is. I mean,
ultimate whodunit right there.
Yeah.
Well, that's good though, because I think that for all its success, Young Animals kind of pigeonholed itself into a certain niche market. Maybe Mother Panic aside, but keep doing stuff like this. My God, show us what you can do. I mean, this could, throw a couple more curse words in there. This could easily have been a Black Label book, but it's not. It doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a good comic.
Yeah.
So, hell yeah, keep it up, Gerard Way. Guys, I don't really think I have anything else on Far Sector this week. Okay. So, yeah, high marks all around. All right, so book numero dos for the week. We have Fallen Angels from Marvel, written by Brian Hill, art by Simon Kudransky, excuse me. This is the final release of Dawn of X, at least for Wave 1. It tells the story of Psylocke, not Betsy Braddock, but Psylocke. I don't know. You guys are going to have to explain that one to me. And she has gotten a mystery vision of an evil guy outside of Krakoa whom she must stop and kill and murder. And she enlists Kid Cable and X-23 to help her, and nobody's supposed to know that she is going where she's going. Nick, have at it. I think you loved this comic, didn't you?
I did, and it was kind of great timing because I did the X-Men binge last weekend, and it turned out Psylocke was a character I was super into. So I branched out and read pretty much most of her rather complicated backstory, because you get Betsy Braddock and then this merging where she becomes a ninja, an agent of hand, and merged with Quanon, who is where this ability comes from, and then you go through these stories up until, I believe it was the Hunt for Wolverine, Mystery in Madripoor, that they're looking for Wolverine's corpse, and you get the separation of Betsy Braddock and Quanon, and then we really don't see much until post Hickman, and what we get here is, I think, what was it, Excalibur, where we saw Betsy Braddock become Captain Britain? And that was something that has always been an influencing aspect of the character through the years. So it was cool to see her take up the mantle. But to be honest, I didn't really care. I was like, where's Psylocke? Where is this character at? And I knew Hill was bringing her back in this really cool way that treated her seriously and gave her depth and hopefully some coherence in the story to establish these characters. You get only a brief introduction to their conversation in Fallen Angels 1, where they pretty much put the conversation off to another time. And I get what they're doing with that, building anticipation, and that's what storytelling is. So that's great. And so diving into Fallen Angels 1, it just opens up a whole new story for this dark corner of Krakoa and these mutants and what they're doing. It follows Quanon, who's pretty much just going by Psylocke now, who's commanded to take that name, and they have I don't know if it's some type. How do they get to know about what APOTH is happening? But there is this huge, complicated, pretty much story of this technological drug that is impacting people, and it's drawing Psylocke away from the island, which is not allowed. You can't leave, and that's what creates this almost like rebellious vibe out of the story. It's pretty dark, and if you don't get that from the overt use of blacks and all the artwork, it's really overselling the dark vibe. And I think in that people have started to complain about the characterizations that are in the book, that it doesn't really match current X-Men vibe with what Hickman's done. And the issue, because of that, kind of became controversial, where Hill talked about, whether you loved or hated it, just thank you for supporting his work and all of that. And it's been one of the few X-Men books in Hickman's era that people have started to debate whether it's good or bad. It hasn't just been universal praise I've seen, which is interesting because I loved it. I was super into everything they established. They're building this character up now, Psylocke, that has a real story that has weight to it, in depth. With, I don't know how far into spoilers we should get, but there's a lot of things happening here with this new villain, their role on Krakoa, and a secret that's very family oriented, if you catch my drift, that is going to push this story and I think really pull fans of Psylocke into it. The artwork from Kudansky is brilliant. I'm a huge fan. I believe did work on Spawn too, and just really works well for this dark vibe. I really, really enjoyed it, and I think outside of Marauders, it's probably been my favorite of this wave, and one that I'm probably end up going to pick up all the floppies and then get the trade when I see it because it'll have a cool cover or something. So it's going to be a book like that, and every page I thought was great. There's a few panels that are a little wonky, and that's, I guess that it is what it is, but for the most part, I just loved it. And maybe since I shed some light on Psylocke's duality backstory, maybe you can help explain why we still have young Cable, because that one threw me for a loop.
Nobody can explain that right now.
I'm not alone then.
No, I recommend you go back and pick up last year's Extermination miniseries for the debut of Kid Cable. It's possible by the end of that they explained it, and I just don't remember, to be perfectly honest with you, because I read 100 comics a month easily. So it's very possible I've forgotten. But that's also the story where they put the toys back in the box and finally sent the damn E055 back in time where they belonged the whole time. I don't want to get too off track with my rant on that, but yeah. Ooh. Mike, what'd you think about Fallen Angels?
I enjoyed it. I was a little kind of hesitant from coming off of New Mutants and stuff like that, but I'm just kind of with this whole, after Hawks and Pox, I'm just kind of approaching every new X title as Marvel has found gold and they are just going to reap the benefits of this new storyline and Hickman and all that stuff. But this was definitely not the case. This really, I read this a couple different times and was just really grabbed into it. The battle, the internal battle that Psylocke kind of goes through, I think it's like page 10 or so when she kind of falls in, and you got the picture of the baby, and she's kind of like what's going on type deal, and we're kind of introduced to the whole APOTH thing as she goes to Magneto and kind of seeks counsel for Magneto, and then it's kind of almost in a ha-ha, I found a little chuckle out of it, where it almost feels like she is bouncing between Magneto and Mr. Sinister, of like the mom and dad type of advice, where she goes to Magneto and she's like, yeah, I need to leave. Well, Charles, you're supposed to have this, his way of thinking. Oh, Charles is no longer here type deal. We'll go to Mr. Sinister. Well, she goes to Mr. Sinister, and Mr. Sinister was like, well, just kind of go off of Magneto's vanity. I always do type deal. And it was just, so that was kind of a funny thing. But I think what Brian Hill achieved, from at least on my aspect, was you almost found yourself rooting for Psylocke to find out her past and this, kind of get on the whole APA thing, and really kind of what is this new drug and what she is really trying to find out. Because I definitely think there's more to what, obviously there's more to what we're introduced to in this issue. But it was something that, when you get introduced to the whole Kid Cable thing, which I actually was taking notes on the whole extermination thing, because the whole Kid Cable thing has me through a loop right now. But the Kid Cable, the X-23 doing X-23 things, in that one panel where she is just kind of like ripping dudes up, was really good. But this was good. I'll definitely kind of want to check out more of the Fallen Angels and see how far this goes. Definitely for me, and I'll leave this up to the experts, most of my X stuff, I'm not going to lie, comes from the collected works. So those the intricate issues, that don't get collected, maybe that tell the different story, or tell something, the little small minute things that you may not get obviously in a collected works, because it was a huge $1 million selling story, what have you. But this was definitely, for me, it was a good starting point. I feel that would almost make me want to dive into more, because now I want to know more about Psylocke. I want to know more about, APOTH, regardless if it's how far I have to go back, or if I'm going to continue this, post Hickman X run type deal that Marvel has found. For me, it was good. It was definitely, the art, as Nick said, was monumental. I think it really spoke to the words, and it really captured just at times Psylocke's pain and stuff like that. So, but for me, overall, it was good. I'll definitely check out more issues, and as Nick said, probably even the collected stuff, because it's probably going to come with some cool covers and some cool, artwork that you're not going to see. But yeah, definitely worth checking out.
Okay. Well, I didn't like it, so I'll just throw that monkey in the wrench. I really didn't like it. It was easily my least favorite of the Dawn of X books so far, and I'll tell you right off the bat, my biggest problem with it is that it doesn't add to the overarching Dawn of X narrative that much. X-Men is the main book, and X-Force plays its part. New Mutants and you could argue it doesn't, but it's also a good fan servicey book, and it was well written. We talked about that pretty good last week. Excalibur, it was okay. I didn't care for that one either, but I didn't regret reading it. I just flat out did not get into Fallen Angels, you guys. And I'm going to tell you the first reason why is it doesn't bother to explain why Betsy Braddock and Psylocke are two different people again. Mm-hmm. I realize this is a relatively new development, but Betsy Braddock was riding shotgun in an Asian body for like 25 plus years, real world. Now all of us, and I will also add that Quanon, whose body she was inhabiting, was eventually put into the original Betsy Braddock body, which succumbed to the legacy virus around X-Men number 30, circa 1993-94. There's not any explanation. I'm sure there's an explanation out there. I'm sure I could scour the internet, but I shouldn't have to scour the internet to understand why a thing is happening in the first issue of this comic. So the setup for me as a longtime fan, perhaps a little lapsed on Psylocke, is damning in and of itself. So that's frustrating to me because I don't know who this Psylocke is. Okay, I know it's not Betsy Braddock. Kwannon herself, and I'm just going to refer to that because that's what I think of her as. That's her real name. She's kind of a badass ninja chick. I mean, an assassin. That's what we know of her. We don't know much about her otherwise. So I'll give Brian Hill credit to fleshing out her backstory. I mean, that's good, and especially the stuff with the kid. That was really heartrending. But it wasn't enough to me to justify a whole series based around this character. Maybe I don't know. But I found myself just disinterested in what was going on, to be perfectly honest with you. A big problem, too, is a lot of the dialogue falls really flat. And I think it reminds me a lot of M. Night Shyamalan dialogue, in that every line is written as though it's the most important thing ever said. And it's delivered in this flat, dull manner. And the exchange between Psylocke and Magneto is a perfect example of this. And this is a little bit on Kudranski. I don't have the script so I can't be sure if he chose to frame it this way or not. But every panel is this really tight close-up of either Magneto or Psylocke as they go back and forth. And it creates this sense of importance about everything, you know, the queen is a lizard. She is from Neptune, whatever. That was serious stuff. It would be really serious. But, it wasn't a dream, Magneto. What shall I call you now? It's difficult to think like Charles, but I'm certain he would have told you to leave the matters of the human world be. And it's just, it just all fell flat to me. I don't know, just the art. I like Kudranski sometimes, but he has this weird way of drawing people where they look like they're from the Uncanny Valley, and I think it was Cody who was saying that they looked like those Fleshlight sex dolls or something like that. There's a few panels where that's true. That might be taking it a little far. But overall, I again, kind of get back to my original point and stop nitpicking it to death. I just didn't feel like this added to Dawn of X in a meaningful way. And there wasn't enough going on with the characters to make me want to read the second issue.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, to the point of it doesn't add anything, have we seen any mutants so far rebel against these laws and try to leave Krakoa in this type of way?
We haven't, and I definitely take your point, and I think you're right in that it could get there, but the rebellion in and of itself seems kind of secondary to both the Apoth story and Psylocke herself, so I can't put a ton of stock in that yet.
It seems like a reason, to pull mutants away into. I think even the artwork and everything just contributes to this dark, shady atmosphere where things are happening, underneath, in the underground where you're not supposed to see it. And they're leaving Krakoa against the wishes of the council, and they're really manipulating people. And I guess that's what it adds, or it's what it's trying to do, whether it succeeds in that.
Kind of the seedy underbelly of paradise.
Yeah, there's always going to be people that you can try to keep them on the island and say this is your refuge and your home, but you'll never stop the, what comes out and how these people are going to behave. I think that's always where storytelling will be. And it was only a matter of time before this paradise has now found people from within who are like, I need to get out and, I need to dip for a little while. And when that's not possible, what route do you go to? And then you have, Psylocke, who, in her defense, was separated last year. So it has been a year since these characters have separated. We just haven't followed that much. And she has such a complicated story of being merged and then being separated. And,
well, that's true.
it. So I was glad to see this at least take this character seriously and say, this is who we have now, who is just Psylocke. It's not supposed to be Betsy who's merged and you don't know who it is. This is just Psylocke, and Betsy's doing her own thing now.
Right.
And I liked that, but that's where I thought the issue did best, and maybe it gets lost in trying to do too much. But goodness, the art was spectacular. I'll never. No, it was great.
I think it was inconsistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it relied too much on just dumping black ink on everything, and to the point of maybe covering for some artistic deficiencies. Maybe. I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying, there's just so much damn ink on it. I could see that being the case. It wouldn't be the first time it's happened. Again, I'm certainly not pointing fingers at anyone for that. But god damn, that's a lot of ink. It's a lot of it.
But like her training pages of her meditating and even the panel design.
Those are really beautiful. I'm sitting here dumping on it, but I'm not giving fairness to the good Spartans on it. It's not all bad by any means.
Yeah, for every like heavy black page you get, there's one that's covered in these like beautiful flowers and that's hidden amongst the panels and
chopping butterflies in half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a cool page, by the way.
That was great. Yeah.
The whole back and forth between like Mr. Sinister and Magneto was so dark. It was like you could use other colors. Like you can use different stuff to express this. I mean, and that's what made me chuckle. It's like, wow, it's like she's playing mom and dad again, but this should be brighter. Like, is this a joke? Like, I mean,
how has he not tripped over a stool yet?
Yeah.
That's a very serious story where like New Mutants was pretty lighthearted, and to the point of like her being Psylocke. I think it's a point because it shows she was beaten and saying your name is Quanon, and she introduces herself as Psylocke. So I think that's a plot point that'll be explored, but just a lot going on. And,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when do we get our next wave of Dawn of X books? Is it January or February? No, Wolverine is February, but to my knowledge, they haven't announced any other books.
It might be February because I think the next one is Wolverine, I believe.
Okay. All right, so we've got all the parts in place right now for Dawn of X as it stands. Dawn of X Phase 1, as it were. Spend the next couple months putting all the, exploring this world, putting all the pieces in place, and seeing what shakes loose. It's honestly, I mean, I haven't been this excited for X-Men stuff since like 2001 to 2004 or whenever. This is really remarkable right now. What's going on? We throw around words like revolution and a title or a renaissance to the point that they lose meaning, but this really is a renaissance happening in X-Men right now. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it's just made me remember why I love these characters. Were my first love in comics and always will be. So hell yeah. I mean, okay, so Fallen Angels wasn't quite for me. Whatever. There's so 5 other good books. And I mean, obviously I may be in the minority on Fallen Angels. So, it's all relative. Bottom line, get you some X-Men comics now. If you're not already. You do not want to be late to this party.
No.
All right. Well, gentlemen, I thank you for your conversation this week. Let's move on to our last segment. What have you been reading? What are you looking forward to? Mighty Mike.
Normally what I try to do is kind of get some older stuff, but no one wants to know that I'm reading the KISS Compendium for comics right now. So what I will tell you that I'm reading is Family Tree #1 by Image.
Awesome. We debated about talking about that on the episode.
I solely picked this up on Creative Team Alone with Jeff Lemire, Phil Hester, Ryan Cody, Eric Gapster. I think it's one of those combinations that you see on the shelf, or you see like in your previews, whether you buy the preview still or you go previewsworld.com, and you kind of mark that down as, yeah, okay, this Wednesday I'm going to go check out this book. But this is really good. This is it kind of tells the story of this little girl. She's probably, I don't know, 12 or so, but she pretty much starts sprouting roots like a tree, right? But there's more to, because like her mom, Loretta, I can already tell is going to be a strong female character, single mom, teenage son, about a preteen daughter. Then they have this weird grandfather that comes in, but because it's a new book, I don't want to spoil about the grandfather and stuff like that. But it's well worth the read. Definitely worth the pickup. And for all my Ween fans out there, the teenage son is wearing a Ween shirt. So on that alone, I'm going to tell you to pick up the book because he's wearing a Ween shirt. So, but other than that, yeah. And then as far as my book that's going to come out, I can't say enough about David Das. I'm going to mess his last name up. David Dasmalchian and his Count Crowley book from Dark Horse Comics. If you are into any type of ghoul type of stuff, Sven-Gully type of horror, monster magazines, this stuff is really, really good. I did the review for the spoiler-free review, I guess, for issue 1, and it's a really good book. I think it's going to be probably one of the most underrated books of the year. It's going to go for a few issues. It's not going to go forever, but it's definitely worth the check out, and definitely check out Count Crowley.
Awesome. Nick, how about you?
It has been a busy week. It's hard to even pick what I've been diving into because the X-Men binge happened, and I read like 50, 60 comics over the weekend.
Man, give us some highlights. What did you get into?
I actually made a list, and the reading list started with God Loves, Man Kills.
Okay.
They told me it kind of just would set the stage for X-Men and kind of give context for it. And it didn't take long before I was super into Psylocke, so I went into Uncanny 256 and went through her run and kind of introduced her. And it was interesting. You see her become Agent of Hand, and that was pretty cool. And by that point, I had read quite a few of the word salad older ones from Claremont, so I went to a modern Psylocke 1 through 4, which was quite the opposite. It was like not very well written, and just like all of this kind of sexy art that was sexy for Marvel, which was kind of strange. But I think 2 of 4 featured.
What was that, about 97 or so?
I think it was like early 2000s actually.
Okay.
Yeah, it was like 2 out of 4 were just straight ass shots on the cover. So it was like you know what you're getting into. So after that, I go like back into Mutant Massacre with Uncanny 210, and follow that one. Really cool stuff.
Green versus Sabretooth, man.
Mm-hmm.
Wolverine arguably could be my first love in comics. I think, like you said, X-Men was for you, but I never really dove into X-Men. It was only Wolverine.
Okay.
When I was like 14, I was shaving Wolverine chops because like I would grow it out on the weekend, and like I've always been a fan, but only I have 2 or 3 short boxes of Wolverine titles and like a dozen X-Men. So it's like
not to interrupt. Can we get pictures of you with those Wolverine chops though?
Yes.
They might exist somewhere. I'm sure on the internet somewhere, right?
I'm gonna Google that right. I'm gonna Google that right now. But keep talking. That's good.
Yeah. So I go through that, and then I come back to I did the Mystery and Magic report, so I could figure out what's going on with Psylocke. Days of Future Past, brilliant. I love 2 issues. Sit down and read it. It's 2 issues. It's great stuff. And then I felt like I needed to come back to something modern, and I wanted to approach X-Men after quite a few dozen Uncannies, just random ones. Which is at 160, I think, where you see Dracula fall for a storm.
I want to say that's 158 or 159.
Yeah, it's right in that area.
Yeah, because 160 is the Ilyana issue.
Okay, yeah.
So in Limbo.
Definitely, I think it might be right after that. It might be 161 then, because then you have the Magneto Xavier origin story that kind of goes into them right before the Brood saga.
Yes.
And I love that one. Those are the issues where it's like, this is why I'm reading comics. This one
all
shot.
Those good one and dones, man.
Yeah.
Well,
like
and it's worth noting, especially for for you that's kind of new to the table on this, that Xavier Magneto issue is where Magneto starts becoming a more fleshed out 3-dimensional character. Everything up until then, even the best Magneto stories, like from Uncanny 112 and 113, he's played just as a straight villain. All the nuance, all the gray area, that starts with that Xavier story right there, as well as the Xavier Magneto friendship. That was never a component until that issue.
It's interesting that they create this Magnus persona for Magneto to finally inject all of this complexity into it. So that was super interesting. Yeah, love all of it. So I went back and redid House of X and Powers of 10 and tried to, get a better understanding of what Hickman's doing. And even after reading so many Uncanny issues in these little branches of Psylocke and Wolvie and even some Nightcrawler in there, good stuff. Hickman's work is pretty brilliant. It stands up to, reading Days of Future Past and then going into this. It's pretty great stuff. So I was really excited for that. And the binge continues, but it went from that right into Disney Plus happening. So, oh my gosh, it happened on Tuesday. So I'm coming out of the house and seeing daylight for the first time in hours. So Disney Plus happens, and the first thing I do, I have to, is jump into the X-Men animated series.
Yes.
So now I can watch that while I read books, and it's just been awesome. But love it. Just really great stuff. If you're not on that, just get it. It's worth it for that alone. And and then The Mandalorian happens, and just come on, it's too good. Just so many things. I'm too busy. I hardly had time for the podcast even. It's like watch Mandalorian again or doing but outside, I guess I am looking for episode 2 of The Mandalorian drops the 15th tomorrow actually, so we're ready for more on that.
Yeah.
And I believe next week is also Deadpool #1 from Kelly Thompson and Chris Bachalo. So
awesome. I
was a fan of Scotty Young's Deadpool. It was the shortest Deadpool run ever, but it was cool. He had this wacky, dark, violent vibe that I know Kelly Thompson's going to do something totally radically different, but I was hoping that one would last longer. Yeah. And I'm excited for this one, but also still a little bummed that one ended. But, such is Marvel. Onward ho and into another #1. So
yeah.
Good gracious.
Well, not for nothing, I absolutely adore Kelly Thompson as a writer, so I think she's going to do some cool stuff with Deadpool.
Yeah, absolutely. She's going to do great with it, and I'm excited. So more Deadpool's never bad, huh?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
Let's not get too far off onto that sidebar. So, following up on our episode last week, I actually dove into some New Mutants back issues I've had lying around. I read The Death of Cypher, which was kind of anticlimactic. He gets shot on a beach and just falls over and he's dead. That's it. Seminal moment. Sorry, spoiler alert. 30 plus year spoiler alert. He's dead. That's it. Some truly weird art by Brett Blevins. It's good. I didn't dislike it, but it's freaking weird, especially when you consider it was 1988 at the time. And then I've also I've got those issues actually tie into the Fall of the Mutants story. And then Fast forward about a year, you've got Inferno happening and the Ilyana/Darkchild subplot that had been brewing for about 50 issues. It reaches its peak during Inferno. She, again, she becomes a little kid again and gets her innocence back. So that's where I've been. I mean, all these years reading X-Men, and there's actually a vast swath of the original New Mutants run I haven't read. So shame on me. A bad fan. It's too busy reading, Generation X and Wolverine in the 90s. I don't know what to tell you.
Amongst everyone else reading comics in the 90s.
And X-Force, damn it. Yeah. Oh, yeah, Nick, that's the other thing you need to get into is that Fabian Nicieza post-Liefeld era of X-Force. Ooh, son.
It's coming. I mean, the new X-Force title is awesome. Like,
yes.
Oh, my gosh. So high standard on that one.
Yeah, the Nicieza run starts... Like, he was doing scripting duties over Liefeld, quote-unquote, plots for issues 1 through 9, and then Liefeld bolted to go do Image... And full scripting duties fall to Nicieza starting with issue 10. There's a kick-ass, that's like 5 issues in, there's a kick-ass Cable versus Deadpool fight that ends all of the subplots that have been burning with Cable up till that point. And then that leads up into the Executioner Song, which is the best ever X-Men crossover. So, you got some good stuff to look forward to. Plus X-Force versus War Machine. Yeah, I can. That just makes me reminds me that we are actually talking about trying to get an X-Men podcast going, so that we don't get distracted by talking about X-Men for like 20 minutes every episode of this show.
Yeah. We have enough to talk about to do
damn
this.
Damn right we do. You're damn right. There's so many good comics to talk about right now. What I'm looking forward to this week is actually the next issue of Teen Titans. We haven't talked about this book in quite a while on this show, but it's still writer Adam Glass and artist Bernard Chang, Damian and his crew, and this is just one of the most quietly solid superhero team books out there. These kids are written like real kids. There's been some serious betrayal that's happened in recent issues. You had the Terminus Agenda crossover that led to the death of Slade Wilson, and fallout from that. This is a really, really well-crafted book with a ton of heart. And man, I just look forward to reading it every month. It's one of the best books that DC's putting out that nobody's talking about. So, yeah, Teen Titans, man. So, with that said, gentlemen, do you have any last thoughts for the week? No.
I'm gonna say, don't be afraid to grab a book off of the shelf from your local comic shop that's not Marvel or DC. Maybe grab something that's not familiar to you, because you may be missing on a good title. Definitely, kind of like with me with Family Tree. Obviously, I'm a huge Image fan, but just Alone, I grabbed it on Creative Team Alone. But yeah, you never know. Just shop the shelves. Do yourself a favor. Make sure you're doing justice to the comics, because comics are fun. Comics are good. And they're just definitely not made by Marvel and DC. They're made by a bunch of other companies out there doing really great stuff with really great characters and really great stories. And definitely don't miss out on, stuff that you're, because it's not the Green Lanterns or the Spider-Man and stuff like that. So,
and I couldn't have said it better myself. Support your local comic shop. Yes. Buy floppy paper comics. Spread them. Spread the good word. They are more than just movies. And with that, we are going to take a 2-week break from the show for work travel in the real world, I guess. And then Thanksgiving the week after that. But we will be back the first week in December. Till then, get all your comic news and reviews written by fans for fans from comic-watch.com. I'm Matt, this is Nick, and Mike. We are the Comic Watchers, and thank you for listening to our show.